All right, welcome to the first episode of RTF Sports Talk. We are here today with Billy, Chris, and Matthew Lyle. Say hello, guys. How's everybody going tonight?
Pretty good.
Doing good. How y'all doing?
All right,
Doing great, guys.
we're just going to jump right into things here. With NFL training camp starting in the next week or two, we're going to look at playoffs. You know, it's way too early, but what teams do you guys think are going to make a splash in the playoffs or make a run to the playoffs that did not make the playoffs last year? Chris, let's go ahead and start with you today. I'm sorry, Billy. Go ahead and start with you.
I'm going to say the Packers. I mean, that's probably the easiest choice. Obviously, they didn't have Aaron Rodgers for much of the season last year. They finished 7-9. I do think that they could get up to that 11-5 record with Aaron Rodgers being back. They lost Nelson, but they added Jimmy Graham. I think that's going to be a huge target for Aaron Rodgers in the red zone. Especially considering what he did in New Orleans. Although he kind of took a step back in Seattle, I don't think he actually fit with Seattle offense. But I think with Green Bay, I think he's going to be better. The defense is going to be much improved. I don't see them being that bad last year. I think they was playing with like their third or fourth string cornerback. That's never really a recipe for success. So I think with the addition of Aaron Rodgers coming back, they still have Ty Montgomery. They still have Devontae Adams and those guys. So I do believe that the Packers will definitely make a big splash next year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. Matthew Lyle, what do you think?
Well, I originally went with Green Bay for all the reasons that he said. I can't really argue with those, but for the sake of the show, I'm going to go a little different direction. I do think Green Bay is going to be the biggest splash with Aaron Rodgers, with Jimmy Graham. But I think, just like I said, just to be different, I'm going to go with Denver. I think they're going to sneak in as a wild card. They're going to have a strong defensive line. They're going to be able to get to the passer with Von Miller and Chubb, the guy they just drafted. I think they're going to be much better with the quarterback that they signed. And with those talented receivers on the outside, I think they're going to make a push and surprise a lot of people.
Well, unfortunately, the Broncos got to get past the Kansas City Chiefs.
Don't get me started on that. Chiefs
so,
trash, ain't doing nothing.
So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
You know what? My pick too, but I'm gonna change it. I'm just gonna go off the top of my head. I think the team that surprises some people here could be the Colts. All right, you got Andrew Luck coming back. That Quentin Nelson draft was huge. That was a huge pickup for them coming in at guard. Braden Smith they picked up as well. They needed some help at linebacker. They got Darius Leonard out of South Carolina State in the second round. He's actually very underrated. He had to go to South Carolina State due to some, grade issues and stuff. But I'm going to go with them. But the Packers is definitely the obvious pick here. And the second obvious pick I've got to have for the next topic. So I'll go with the Colts.
Okay, so we everybody here is kind of picking the Packers. Let's jump back to you, Billy. Do you think the loss of Jordy is really going to affect Aaron Rodgers, or do you think Jordy's lost a step a little bit?
I think it's gonna hurt him a little bit. I mean, if you think of that Rodgers and Jordy Nelson connection, that's basically his touchdown guy. And we all know if you ain't scoring touchdowns in the NFL, you're probably not gonna win. So the Jordy Nelson is gonna be a huge loss, but I believe with Jimmy Graham, I believe they'll be able to cut that loss a little bit, especially with his big body, 6'5", 6'6" guy, basketball guy who can go up and get it in the red zone. I think that actually helps Rodgers, especially with their non-existence to a running game. So Jordan Nelson's going to hurt him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to hurt him as much because they do have another touchdown machine in Jimmy Graham. As long as you give him the ball.
Yeah, as long as they can get him the ball. So everybody's picking the Packers. So does this mean the Vikings are going to fall off? Matthew, what do you think on that?
I do. I think they hit a hot streak with the quarterbacks last year. I don't think they're going to be able to duplicate that with Kirk Cousins. He's going to be nice, but I just think they caught a lot of people off guard. I think it's going to be a step back for them. They still might be the wild card team in that conference, but I don't think the division is theirs to run away with anymore. And you can never trust the Lions and the Bears too young.
Yeah, so everybody's pretty much agreeing with the Packers, and then we got the Colts and the Broncos. Anything you guys want to add on that?
Not really. To go on Chris's point a little bit, it sounds like he has a lot of faith in the Colts. I just don't know where Andrew Luck's at.
Yeah, that's definitely a big question.
I understand that completely. I think them shoring up that offensive line a little bit, though, may help him.
All right. Well,
they very well could.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just agreeing that the line will certainly help, especially if he can come back.
All right. So we'll definitely keep track of everybody's picks there, see how we all do for the rest of the year. So let's go ahead and move on. The AFC West. Who do you guys got winning that division this year? Matthew, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to break your heart. I know this question's solely in here for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm going Oakland Raiders. Strong quarterback, good receivers.
Whoa.
John Gruden is back. The love in that city will be off the charts. I think they're scared to death it's going to go to Las Vegas. And, I mean, I just don't see anyone else in that division truly stepping up. So I think the Raiders, it's theirs to lose. I don't have faith in Mahomes. I do think that the Broncos can get that defense together at the end of the year. And Phillip Rivers has never done anything but let me down. He's going to get you in a close game, but I don't know if he's going to win it. So Raiders fairly easily.
Alrighty. We got the Raiders. I'll go ahead and put you down on that one. Chris, who do you got?
Chargers. They got the veteran quarterback in Phillip Rivers, whatever you want to call him. But they finished the season as strong as damn near any team in the NFL. What, they win 6 out of 7 coming down the stretch, something like that? They got a solid group on the offensive side of the ball. They ended up with a top 15 defense last year by the time it was over. And I believe that defense will start to slowly catch up to where they're top 12, top 10, top 12. And with Smith gone from Kansas City, Andy Reid, he's going to have to play with that playbook a little bit this year. And I just don't see them doing it. What the Chargers finished 9-7 last year, something like that. And
yeah,
as did the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, as did the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think they're the team that's there to naturally fill the void. To touch on the Raiders, I think they're playing for the draft pick to go to Vegas, man.
All righty.
I really believe that.
Chris, go ahead.
I just went.
Oh, sorry, Billy.
Well, I'm gonna agree with Chris. The Chargers was also my pick. I wanted Mike, I wanted to make you happy, man, and I wanted to build a case for the Chiefs, but I don't know if I can do it for the exact same reason that Chris said with Patrick Mahomes. I don't know how he's going to do. I'm going to pick the Chargers because of, to me, I mean, Phillip Rivers is a veteran quarterback. You still have Melvin Gordon there. You still got Keenan Allen, who I thought probably like a few years ago before he tore his ACL. Yeah, easily top 5, I believe. And then you add in Derwin James, who I thought from, the great Florida State University, I thought he was probably the best player in the draft this upcoming year. So, you talk about a guy who can go down in the box and guard in the slot, who can come down and blitz, who can play tight ends. He's 6'3", 220-some pounds. I believe the emergence of him into that defense, I think that the Chargers is going to be the team to beat. I mean, that division was up for grabs anyways. The Chiefs was 10-6 last year. They won that division. So, that is why.
Yeah, they won it off of tiebreakers, I do believe.
Yeah.
So they're both 9-7. Them the Chargers both, wasn't it?
Yeah, it came down to the last game of the year that Chiefs had to beat the Chargers or something of that. I can't remember 100% sure.
Yeah, that division is going to be wide open.
Yeah. So you guys don't have very much faith in the Raiders. I mean, they signed John Gruden to that $100 million contract, 10 years. They're making a big splash.
Man, they're trying to build
agency.
a home in Las Vegas.
Do you think they're solely playing for Las Vegas, Chris?
I pretty much do, yeah. Yeah, I really do. The stadium's being built. That ain't coincidental. I think they're playing for Vegas. And I'm not saying that they're going to be – they do have David Carr, all right? And that's a lot. But they're an older team. I think they're planning to build toward this next draft. I strongly believe that.
Well, if I can jump in, a couple things on the Chargers. I get where you guys are going. Phillip Rivers is a veteran. He's a great quarterback, or at least really good. But I don't care who the Chargers have or don't have. They always seem to find themselves down 35-38 with 2 minutes left. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. I don't know who they could have the 85 Bears, and for some reason they're going to find themselves in that situation. I think that's Phillip Rivers' destiny. Not to get sidetracked on that, but I think that's how he's going to go down in history known as. Going back to the Raiders, I get what you're saying, Chris. They're packed up. They've already got the doors going to Vegas and ready to roll. But the only reason I don't think that's going to affect this season is, unlike the NFL, you don't have to tank. There's so much talent all through that first round. You can be a 20th pick or you can be the 3rd pick. You're liable to get something great either way. Who would have thought the 2 best rookies last year, Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara, would have came out of the 3rd round? The teams that are the Browns that are struggling and they're no good, quote unquote tanking if you want. They could have used either of that. So I mean, it's going to go with scouting and all that, but I think that can still be achieved. You can still develop and build and not tank this season away. A 10-6 season can get you still a pretty solid draft pick for next year and make Vegas still be just as flashy as ever.
Now,
Billy, you got any thoughts on that?
I will say this though, the Raiders do have something going for them. I mean, they came in 3rd last year, so they're going to be facing a 3rd place schedule this year. Based on really how the NFL likes to do their schedule.
They have the 3rd weakest schedule in the league.
They'll have the 3rd.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, right there.
Yeah, so they're going to be playing a weak schedule, so they will have that going for them. They did add Jordy Nelson. They lost Crabtree. We'll see how David Carr worked well with Jordy. John Gruden's been out of the game for a long time, and I respect John. I'm from Florida, so I remember those Tampa Bay years. I just don't think he is going to be his game. I don't think that's going to translate over to what we seeing in the NFL today.
I truly think it'll take a couple years for him to really gain his footing in the new game because he's been out for so long. Do you guys think that as well?
I totally agree.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
And
I'm going to go the other way with that one, Mike. I'm going to go the other way. I think he's going to come out the cannon the first 2 years, and then once everybody realizes, hey, times have changed, he's a little older, then it's going to start to go downhill. I think that first year is going to be his best year.
That could be true.
So you're
that
saying
could be true because he could be trying to overcalculate.
So you're saying the mad Chucky look will work all great this time?
The first year, then everything will realize. It's like when a college brings in one of their great alma mater to coach their university. It works great for like the first 2 years, and then once all the shine goes off, they start realizing, hey, this guy's not the coach we thought he was. Time to move on.
I can agree with that.
That's possible. Yeah, I can't totally disagree with it. So I mean, yeah, it's very possible.
What's next, Mike?
Alrighty, guys. Speaking of moving on here. All right, guys. So speaking of moving on here, college football is a little over 6 weeks away. Let's go ahead and put the college playoffs into play here. What 4 teams are going to make it this year? Let's go ahead and start with Chris.
Well, we're going to say Alabama because they're Alabama. Okay. I think Clemson gets in this year. I'm going to go with the 2 picks that I'm almost positive with. That's Clemson. They lost a few players to the NFL, but nothing major. They picked up who I consider the best recruit in the country in Trevor Lawrence. And I know it's hard to imagine that you got Kelly Bryant there, but yet you're going to have a quarterback controversy. It's going to happen. I watched that spring game at Clemson this year, and in 2 passes, you knew this kid's the truth. He's coming out. He's like 6'6", 6'7", something like that, 210, 215, coming out of high school. He's a true freshman. He's a lot more physically developed than Deshaun Watson was at this stage. And who so happens that's whose high school records he shattered in the state of Georgia. and they have what 3 or 4 possible first round picks on the D line. I think Clemson gets in. I think the Washington Huskies get in, and it's almost by default. There was no Pac-12 team last year. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? I don't see them leaving them out 2 years in a row. If they can be a 1 or 2 loss team, I think they're going to get in. I also think that possibly the most underrated coach in America is Franklin up at Penn State. I think they're a team to watch for, and I'm going way out on a limb here. But what were they, like 6 points from being undefeated last year? You know what I mean? So that's going to be my 4 teams.
Alrighty. Billy, who do you got?
Well, just like Chris, my first 2 is almost solid. I'm going to go Alabama just because I know the committee always favor Alabama. No matter how many times they lose in a year, they're going to always say Alabama is the best team. So they're going to get the most opportunities to get into the college playoffs.
Exactly.
I'm also going to say Clemson just by default because I don't think with my Seminoles getting a whole new coaching revamp, I don't think that and I'm not as sold on Taggart just yet. He haven't really done much in anywhere that he's ever been. So I'm going to go Clemson for the same reasons. Kelly Bryant is still there. He still have Lawrence. And to his point in the spring game, Lawrence was 11-15 in that spring game. I mean, he was just on the money. I'm also going to go Georgia. I do believe 2 SEC teams is going to get in. I do believe that second team will be Georgia. Their quarterback I believe he's going to be a little bit better this year. They did lose both running backs in Chubb, but I do believe they're going to be all right. And then Ohio State, just because I don't think that they play a tough schedule. And Urban Meyer is always going to have his team in the mix. So Ohio State, they did lose a couple first rounders, but it's Ohio State in this. Who do they play, honestly? Let's just be real about that. So I believe that those are my 4 teams: Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson.
All right, Matthew, who do you got?
Billy, you're killing me, man. That's my 4. I can't even switch it up, and not even for the sake of the show, I can't make a change. Alabama is going to dominate the West. They're going to be in it. Georgia is going to dominate the East. They're going to be in it. The championship game is going to be so close, the committee's not going to care. Ohio State, you're right. They somewhat easy schedule, and they're going to go on par with Michigan. I have a feeling Ohio State and Michigan will be that 4-5 majority of the season, and then Ohio State will beat Michigan, and then that'll be enough to put them in. And then Clemson down in the ACC. Lamar Jackson, he's gone out of Louisville. Florida State's quote-unquote rebuilding by their standards. I think Clemson gets a pretty easy walk in. To Chris's point on the Huskies, I think the Huskies burned their bridge, even though you're not supposed to take in past years. I think the Huskies burned their bridge several years ago when they got in on a limb and got demolished. So I think the Pac-12, they're not going to get any trust. Oklahoma, they're gone, so I don't think the Big 12 is going to get much trust. And the championship game, Alabama-Georgia, was so great. I think they're not afraid to make that happen again. So
they're not.
I think last year. I think last year they ruffled enough feathers by putting 2 of the SEC and leaving 2 power conferences out that pretty much broke the seal. Now they don't care to do it every year if necessary. And I don't see anyone else in the ACC. That Ohio State could be flipped with Michigan, maybe a Penn State, but Ohio State, Urban Meyer, he's
or maybe
just
a
so
USC.
reliable. USC, you said it.
Maybe USC.
I don't trust USC in big games anymore.
No, I don't either.
Ever since Reggie and them left, I'm right there with you, man. I just think Clemson. Only reason why I think an ACC team is going to make it and not a Pac-12 because I believe that one of the ACC teams, either Clemson or Miami, have that opportunity because Miami is really not all that rebuilding. Yeah. But I don't see Miami getting past Florida State. I do believe Clemson will be the undefeated ACC champion, and I don't think they'll leave an ACC champion who's been to that stage, 2 or 3 times in a row. I don't see them leaving them out.
And just to add some things there, TV time. ACC teams have a lot more TV time than those Pac-12 teams because they're 4 hours behind the Eastern teams. So do you guys think TV time will play anything?
TV time always plays into the picture.
See, I'm going to go against that. I don't think in today's age, I think there's such a big committee. There's so many ESPNs. If Oregon, if Ohio, if USC, if Washington, if Utah, if any of those teams are good, you're going to see it. In the early BCS years, I get it. Hey, it was tough to catch a 11 o'clock Pac-12 matchup. But now with all the promoting, with ABC and ESPN having their hands in everything, if I can watch Middle California Tech College if I wanted to. So I mean, there might be a very slight impact by that, but I don't think it's going to be enough to keep a team out of this. Because if you're good enough to be in this conversation, you're going to be in. But to Billy's point, even on paper, Clemson looks better than any Pac-12 team. So I think they get in for that reason.
Do you guys have any dark horses?
I'm gonna be biased if I say a dark horse.
I'm gonna catch flack for this.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I may catch flack because I covered in Georgia. I covered the Bulldogs, all right, for a living. So, but I don't feel like they're going to replicate what they did last year. I really don't. There was an enthusiasm around that campus that I've never seen, that I haven't seen in over 20 years. And I don't see that coming right back. They had a great recruiting class. Don't get me wrong, a great recruiting class. But I think they lost some stuff like Raekwon. He's gone. Lorenzo Carter's gone. This defense falls down a little bit, and the defense kept him in games that people didn't realize last year. That I don't think they keep him in so close. Now, as far as being an SEC is, yeah, they do. They got a good walk. If I wanted to pick a second SEC team, and people's going to laugh at this, it might be Auburn. Malzone, he come back. They got Stidham coming back. What hurt them is they lost the running backs, if I'm not mistaken, as did Georgia. But I think Alabama, Clemson are solid picks. I do feel they'll put a Pac-12 team in there if they're 1 or 2 losses only. Now, if it gets to like 3 losses, then no, it's not going to happen. Penn State, I think, I've got a lot of faith in Franklin as a coach, man. They ended up being 4 points from being undefeated last year, So, and I know they lost Barkley, but McSorley's back, so that's the reason I went with Penn State. Kind of like a dark horse. Of course, it's easy to pick Ohio State. It's easy for me to say Georgia again because that's what I do. But I just feel like Penn State maybe sneaks in, and I think they go with a Pac-12 team if long as 2 losses are left.
And Billy, I'm assuming you're going to pick Florida State.
Yeah, I'm going to go Florida State because we are still returning Cam Akers, who was one of the top freshman running backs in the NCAA last year, and we still are coming back with DeAndre Francois. The only problem with that in the defense, we always have a nasty defense. We're always going to be right at the top in defense. Even last year, we was right in there in just about every single game last year. The only problem was the freshman quarterback. He couldn't hit a cow standing right in front of him. I think that changed this year. We do get the benefit of playing the ACC, which is not a tough conference. And we have two games to really focus on all year. That's Miami and that's Clemson. As long as you win Miami pretty considerably and you beat Clemson, I think you have an easy road to get to the college football championship, because those are really the only 2 teams that stand in your way. It's Taggart and his staff. I see some of the stuff they're doing, obviously, but I'm not sold on it. He didn't do a good job at Oregon. When he was down in South Florida, he did okay, and in Western Kentucky or wherever he was at. It's going to be a different ball game here. He's going to get a lot of criticism. I'm from Tallahassee, so I know that fan base is going to be on him the first time he loses. Yeah. The first time that he looked like the team is not ready. They're going to be on him. But I think with Francois coming back, you still have Akers. You still have Nooney Murray. I think that is enough. The offensive line is going to be improved. So I believe, Trickett is gone, so that's going to help. He was a little old school. I believe that helps.
All right, so let's say Florida State beats Miami, loses to Clemson, and Clemson has 1 loss. Do you think a 1-loss Florida State gets in over Clemson?
Head up.
It depends on it. To me, it depends on who Clemson lose to. Who is that Clemson lost to?
I honestly haven't looked at Clemson's games, so I couldn't see who they play.
Depending on their Clemson lost, how bad they lose, because I know that's the stuff that the committee take in effect, how bad they lost, where did they lose at, because, they lost last year to Syracuse, but they still got, they were still right there, obviously, because of, Kelly Bryant got hurt in that game. So I think depending on how they lose, I believe if they have a good loss, Clemson to get in over Florida State, just based off recent track record.
Matthew, who's your
my question is?
Well,
just to touch on that, my question isn't who they lose to, like he said with Clemson. It's when they lose. Do you lose week 1, 2, or 3?
Good point.
If you lose week 11, you're done. My dark horse.
That's
I don't know
true.
if you can call
Good
them
point.
dark horse. There's a part of me that says Miami, solely based on the fact that they have a pretty, that we talked the ACC's down, and you have the opportunity to beat a Florida State and beat a Clemson. I'm not sure if they're on their schedule, but if it is, it's going to be a big matchup. And that's an opportunity to jump some people. But if I had to go really out of nowhere, I'm going to say Oklahoma again. I think that the Pac-12 or the Big 12 doesn't give you much for defenses, and Oklahoma is Oklahoma. And I believe they're returning, is it the Murray kid, the one that's playing baseball? He's a pretty nice quarterback, and in that system, I could see him putting up some numbers and getting some fairly easy wins.
Well, and being a Big 12 bias here, Big 12 is definitely an underrated conference. I mean, just from my point of view. But moving on, let's talk about rivalries in sports in general, from Auburn to LSU, Michigan to Ohio State. Who's your guys' biggest rivalry and why? Let's go ahead and start with Billy.
I was going to bring one closer to the vest. I thought about doing Florida State, Miami, but that's not really on the national stage. I'm going to say Duke, North Carolina basketball. I am a Tar Heel fan. My dad was a Tar Heel fan, so naturally I grew up being a Blue Devils fan. So Duke and North Carolina, I don't know any really rivalry. I do know a lot, but I'm saying just for argument's sake, I don't know really any rivalry that gets as hyped as this one. You're talking about on-court fights just about almost every single play. Guys are slapping hands in each other's face all the time. Cameron Indoor Stadium with a Duke in North Carolina, with North Carolina coming in there, people stealing mascots. I mean, that's rivalry. Most of these games are decided between 5 to 7 points, which is what I like. That means that no team is really dominating. The overall series rivalry is 135 to 110. North Carolina leads it. But last year they went North Carolina. They was 2-1 in that. But I just think, man, Duke and North Carolina, when you think of rivalries, that's one that's always on there. Christian Laettner, Michael Jordan, and the Worthy, and all these guys, So Duke and North Carolina, to me, I think definitely takes the cake.
And just to piggyback on that, when you hear Duke, you instantly think of North Carolina. You hear North Carolina, you instantly think of Duke. So, Matthew, who do you got?
Don't even think of those guys as having any other programs except for basketball when you think about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me go bias on this. And when you think rivalry, things change. Teams change, uniforms change. What don't change is the fan base. And Kentucky-Louisville is the best rivalry in sports because here in this state, in this city, we care about all sports. And we get an added bonus. We're not in the same conference. So in basketball, when Kentucky and Louisville plays, if you lose, you're stuck with that shame for a year. Duke, North Carolina, you beat me, I get to beat you in a couple weeks. And then if we tie, we'll probably meet in the ACC tournament. But Kentucky, Louisville, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, or whether it's baseball, they meet once. It's always a close game, no matter who's ranked, who's not. And I'm talking about in football when Kentucky's dead last and Louisville has Teddy Bridgewater. We're losing, it's a 17-24 game. These are rivals that fans are left with shame when you lose. And there's not a chance to make it up for 364 days. So when I think Ohio State, Michigan, they'll tell you it's not about basketball. When you just admitted yourself, Billy, Duke, North Carolina, it's basketball only. But when we beat Lamar Jackson at Louisville, they felt that shame the entire year. That's why I got to say, and it's just mainly because they're not in the same conference. If one of us was to join the same conference, it would lose so much luster because, oh, you beat us, we'll play again in 2 weeks.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Naturally, if you Google it, whatever, everybody's going to come up with the greatest ongoing rivalry is generally considered probably it's either Duke, North Carolina, Ohio State, Michigan, or the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. But Matthew had some great points there. If I wanted to go with the greatest rivalry in sports history, it's Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. All right, and the reason I say that is because when you look at the 5 greatest fights in the history of the world, they have 3 of them. Okay, when you look at how many people sit down and watch this. In America alone, there was over 70 million people each time these two fought. Cut the TV on to watch it happen. Mm-hmm. All right? So that is, without question, in my opinion, the greatest rivalry in sports history. The greatest ongoing rivalry? Man, it's hard to argue against Ohio State and Michigan. It really is. And it's a hard argument in the fact that if you want to just go back in the last 25 years, there's been 7 times that one of the 2 teams have been undefeated coming into their game. And out of those 7, 6 of them, the undefeated team lost. That's tough. That's strong, And so as far as greatest ongoing rivalry, I've got to go with Ohio State and Michigan. As far as, greatest in history, I go, with what I said on Ali and Frazier.
So is that Michigan, Ohio State in all sports or just football?
All sports.
You guys got anything to add to
just
that?
Just football. You're talking about the rivalry. Yeah, it's just football. It's crazy up there.
I like Matthew's point.
I do too.
But if we're talking, if we're talking, I thought we were talking about greatest rivalry. Period. Just that rivalry. Now, I can easily say Florida State, Miami. You go back to Sean Taylor and Ken Dorsey and Peter Warwick and Chris Winkie and Charlie Ward and all these guys. And I mean, you're talking prime time, like Florida State, Miami. That I would argue that's bigger than anything Kentucky, Louisville have. If you ask me, a lot of people don't even know that Kentucky and Louisville is even in the same state. I've talked to a lot of people. They don't even know that these teams are in the same state. So, I just, for rivalry purposes, I say Duke, North Carolina. But, I mean, I can argue the amount of star power, Derrick Brooks and Ward Dunn and all these guys, Devin Hester, and the Florida State-Miami rivalries is just as big as any rivalry in sports.
So do you guys feel that college rivalries are bigger than pro sports rivalries?
Absolutely.
I do. Because I'm sure to some degree we're all college fans of some team, and I can list you, players galore. But if say you're in the NBA and you're a Chicago Bulls fan, you have to be a pretty passionate fan to give me anybody outside of Michael Jordan and Derrick Rose.
That's true.
I think that unless you're just like on there with the Lakers or the Cowboys, some of these all-time greats, you can be a fan of Central Michigan. And if you're a true hardcore fan, you're going to give me some great. You're going to give me top 10 great games. Where if you're a fan of the Cleveland Browns, probably not.
I definitely agree on that, especially to his last point.
We can go top 10 plus the draft pick.
Why right? Why left?
Say that again, Billy.
No, I was saying to his last point that he made. I was saying how many the choke at Doak, all the wide rights, that the wide left. So I definitely agree. College sports rivalry is definitely. But I think too, you're more invested. A lot of the kids are more invested because they probably played with each other or played against each other in high school. So now they're going right there in college to they probably went to separate schools as rivalries. So I do agree. College rivalries are to me are better than pro rivalries.
Chris,
it's not even remotely close in my opinion. And I think the key is one word: alumni.
That's a great point.
So many people, alumni is the key word to me. And that just changes everything. Somebody you know in your family graduated from here. So we all got to like this school unless we go to somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it's passed down through generations. And that's the way it'll continue to be most of the time. And so there's just a lot. It's a lot deeper. The rivalries are a lot deeper in college, in my opinion.
Well, let me give you an example here, Mike. I'm a Kentucky fan. We got Benny Snell, one of the top running backs around, probably in the SEC, maybe even the country. I don't have to worry about him shutting down on me this season. If you're a Steelers fan, how much is Le'Veon Bell going to give you? He's got to think of that bottom line. Le'Veon Bell's got to think of those dollar signs. And yes, Benny Snell could get drafted, but there is something in college that's going to tell him last game of the season when he's playing Louisville, he better rush for 300 yards. When Le'Veon Bell plays the Bengals last game of the season, he may not even play. So that's why that's just one example. But that's just things why college is different than pros to me.
Let me pile on that. Louisville's big issue last year is they didn't have many players playing the bowl game because they were all worried about the NFL. So your point there is kind of invalid, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, at that point, you're at a.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was probably getting ready to say the same thing you are, so take off. I mean, it depends on what bowl it is, too, though, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, and also, let's look at percentage. Everyone in the NFL, 100% of the players in the NFL are looking for a paycheck. Yeah. 5% of college is making that decision. So, okay, yes, Louisville happened. LSU had a Fournette sent out, but look what it did for guys. So in college, you still get to root because you're rooting for the name on the front, not the name on the back, and it's such a small percentage. So yes, one player in an entire conference may do it, where in the NFL, you might, I mean, shoot, how many times have you seen teams, once they lock up the playoffs, they shut everybody down? I went to a week 17 Colts game one time to see Peyton Manning, and I saw Jim Sorgi. So, you know, and now that could get into a different topic because, you know, in college football, every game matters. Where in the NFL, it doesn't. You know, that's a different discussion for a different day. But like you said, you know, yes, you are right, Mike. Some guys do that, but that percentage is so small compared to the NFL. Everyone's trying to watch that bottom paycheck.
All right, let me go ahead and stop you guys right there. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week, noon on YouTube, and we'll do this all over again. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, thanks,